Hello. I read the first 9 chapters from Rethinking Mathematics. My name is Stephen Wilson, and I'm going to give you a little summary of what I read. In the introduction, the author kind of overviews the whole book. They talk about how math is often taught in ways that are separate from the real world. Students often hate math because they are so bored and they see no value in the real world application. Oftentimes, students ask the question, when will I use this? And oftentimes, and even in my classroom, I don't have an answer for them. Um, this book, Rethinking Mathematics, strives to use a rethought method when teaching math. In a rethought math class, teachers make mathematics more lively, accessible, and personally meaningful for students who in turn learn more in depth. The theme of chapter 1 was teaching math across a curriculum. The quote that stood out most to me was, if students are not taught how math can be applied in their lives, they are robbed of an important tool to help them fully participate in society. To me, this means it's important to step away from the drill and practice method of teaching math and move towards making real-world connections to the students' lives. The starting point for many teachers is to build on what students bring into the classroom and to connect curriculum to their lives. To help show students the power of math, it's crucial to connect math with issues of equality by giving examples of how math is used in major controversies in the community. Chapter 1 also talks about how math can be used to uncover stereotypes. And here's a quote I found interesting. Math concepts such as percentages, proportions, and comparisons can be used to help kids discuss the statistics they've uncovered in the graphs they've made. Math can be integrated into curriculum to show history and to teach students valuable lessons. As a teacher, you need to try to highlight numbers that relate to social movements for equity and justice. Chapter 2 talks a little bit about the history of math, and a quote that I found interesting was that the Egyptians, Chinese, and Indians used different styles of mathematics, generalizations, and algebraic problem solving. And what I got from that is that math's been taught for thousands of years in thousands of different ways. We need to shatter the myth that math was or is a white man's thing, and to show that all civilizations, though they differ and develop at different paces, have always been bound to each other. Chapter 3 was interesting because it discussed a school that was closing in the southwest U.S., and they talked to some young Latina girls who tried to find the underlying issue of it. The young Latina girls became engaged in mathematics and social change to save their school. Several schools in a district in the southwest U.S. were closing based on mathematical reasoning to determine which schools to close. The girls worked together to dissect the district's data and break it down into more appropriate cultural data. They found the school's scores were in fact improving, and girls were doing better on the test than the boys were. They wrote letters and spoke at community forums to share the data they had gathered. In Chapter 4, it was an interview with Danny Martin, who is a scholar of mathematical and racial identity development among African American leaders. Here are some of the quotes I found interesting from that interview. The first one, Black children need to experience mathematics in a relevant and meaningful way in relationship to their other life circumstances. He also said there are social injustice arguments about math and its relationship to liberations, struggle, and oppressions. I want people to engage in some deeper reflection on their basic assumptions about Black children and know that those assumptions are then going to lead to what you do. Chapter 5 discussed the theory of critical mathematics literacy. The author pointed out 4 major goals for this. The first one is understanding the mathematics. This is breaking down the dichotomy between learning and teaching math, considering the interactions of culture and the development of math knowledge, studying even the simplest of math topics through deep and complicated questions. The second theory is understanding the mathematics of political knowledge. Students need to learn how math skills and concepts can be used to understand the institutional structures of our society. Number 3 says, understanding the politics of mathematical knowledge. There are political struggles and choices involved in which data are collected, which numbers represent the most accurate data, which definitions should guide how the data are counted, and which methods should guide how the data are counted. The last one says understanding the politics of knowledge. Political knowledge includes reconsidering what counts as mathematical knowledge and representing an accurate picture of the contributions of all the world's people to development of mathematical knowledge. Chapter 6 focuses on how math should be taught in the schools. It starts by saying the teaching of mathematics needs to be connected to the lives and experiences of African American students to enable them to fully take part in our democracy. Traditionally, schools have not provided African American students opportunities to do so. A couple quotes. Many schools argue that the curriculum and the teaching of mathematics have been and continue to be connected to Eurocentric precepts that exclude the African American experience. This teaching mindset is one that needs to change to see a lasting and productive change in the learning of African American students. Chapter 7 introduces teaching math with social injustice. A mathematician is a person who can not only apply mathematical concepts, but can also use them to make sense of the social, political, and economic world that they live in. By connecting mathematical lessons to real-world problems that the students face on a daily basis, they become more engaged and make a connection that they wouldn't in a normal math classroom. Most students think of meaningful math as someone who's a genius in mathematics, but in reality, it is any math that makes a connection to real world and teaches a social lesson that extends beyond the math classroom. Chapter 8 focused on a project that some of the students did. The chapter focused on a project that students completed to show a relationship between a real-world mathematics and social injustice. Students first read an article on the rejection rates for African American, Latinos, and whites in 68 different metropolitan areas. The students mathematically analyzed the data and wrote essays about whether racism was a factor, using data and arguments from the article. And a quote that I liked that went along with this chapter: "The Mortgage Project is an example of how I use mathematics to teach racial justice." Chapter 9 was also a project on wages and living on those wages. The chapter focuses on another project where students were to explore wages from various jobs and to examine the struggle on living on low wages. The lesson started by the teacher reading 4 statements to spark student interest. None of them related to math, but it sparked the social issues. The questions were: those who work should be paid, no one who works full-time should live in poverty, wages should be high enough to support a family on one income, and the legal minimum wage should be high enough to get by. The students then researched various professions and formed linear relationships to compare hours worked and income earned. In part 2, I answered some questions. The question was: what in the readings do you agree with, disagree with, or inspire to? Working at a school that is majority African American and Hispanic, I see the importance of connecting real-world value to math lessons. I find these students get bored and shut down because they cannot relate at all to what is being taught. Math is already a tough and sometimes dry subject for students, but to add projects and assignments that they can relate to at all is almost impossible. I aspire to do a better job incorporating social issues into my math lessons. Before taking this course, I honestly did not put much thought into it because I didn't realize it was an issue. After completing the readings, I see the significance in making connection that students can see and value, and I aspire to make that connection happen in my classroom. Rethinking Mathematics connects to the readings of Banks' Curriculum Transformation in several ways. Both readings call for the curriculum to be taught with the perspectives of different cultural groups in mind. They both allocate for social issues to be infused into the lessons to better connect with minority groups. Both these readings support what I have seen in my own professional learning. Minority students learn better and become more engaged when they are given the opportunity to create and think at a higher level when infusing their own culture into the curriculum. For past lessons, I've had the students complete a PBL, where they were to create a business and actually develop their products and design sales based on percentages, increase and decrease. I would give the students a list of businesses to choose from, like grocery stores, retail, etc. After completing the readings, I would revise this lesson to allow the students to pick the type of business they wanted to create. I'd allow them in the beginning to complete research on different cultural businesses and how successful they are within their community. The students would be allowed to pick a business they think would be best for where they come from. Here are a few questions I have for the group. And this one's from a quote: "Black children need to experience mathematics in relevant and meaningful ways in relationship to their life circumstances." What does this quote mean to you? Have you experienced this in your own classroom? If so, what can be done to make the connection for these students? Number 2, the project in Chapter 8 allows students to research the injustices that surround buying homes for minorities. What extension could you provide to add some authenticity to this project and take it out into the real world? Finally, briefly explain the difference between understanding the politics of mathematical knowledge and understanding the politics of knowledge. Thank y'all for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed.